Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
Good afternoon. I call to order the informational meeting of the City Council. It is February 16th, 2021. Welcome to those watching online, on television, or here in person. Clerk, let's get a roll call of the City Council.
Council members Brecky.
Here.
Erickson. Jensen.
Here.
Kiley.
Here.
Neitzert.
Here.
Selberg.
Here.
Sale.
Here.
Starr.
Here.
Very good. We have 7 present, 3 virtually. First item up today is council remarks. Anyone with council remarks? On the phones? Hearing none, we'll move on to presentations. We have 2 presentations today, both from Parks. First is Emerald Ash Borer Response Plan Update, and that's presented by Kelby Maris, our Park Operations Manager. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, City Council. Kelby Maris with Parks and Recreation, here to provide you with an update on the success of our Emerald Ash Borer Response Plan. First, I'd like to thank the Parks and Recreation team that has been dedicated to this endeavor to get us to where we are at this point. Specifically, Brian Peterson and Maggie Elliott for their efforts and leveraging technology to help us better track our efforts throughout this response plan. And I would also like to thank you for your continued support for this response plan as well. Taking you back a little ways to informational meeting in June of 2018, where we provided this slide then as well, showing before and after of a street in Toledo, Ohio, with the quote from their city forester about how they wish they had started their response sooner. Also from that same presentation, some of the lessons learned from other communities that went before us through this infestation, to stay ahead of the death curve, to reevaluate the response plan as the infestation spreads, not to remove all the ash trees in a given area. This allows the insects to spread slowly into adjacent trees instead of jumping in large bounds, and helps to slow the spread of the infestation. Treatments can be effective in slowing the spread of the infestation, but stopping it is not possible. Starting replanting efforts early and to focus on public safety to minimize the number of standing dead ash trees laid into the response plans. So the death curve would be the red line from when we started this in May of 2018. And that is just simply percentage of ash tree mortality based on the number of trees that we have. And these are street tree numbers. And that is if we did absolutely nothing. If we just let the insect take off and run its course, that would be the type of ash tree mortality that we would see. However, we've got currently have 5,400 active treatments within Sioux Falls. We've been managing wood waste movements, and we've been removing poor and fair quality trees, which have all helped flatten the curve. The black line up here on this slide shows what the death curve would look like with the reduced number of ash trees that we have today. And then the green bars are in 2020 would be our actual removals, and then the rest of them would be projected removals as we get deeper into the response plan. And as you can see with the success of our response plan at this point, we are hopeful that we will definitely stay in front of the death curve. We started this 10-year plan in 2019, and we are adjusting annually as we learn. Enhancements to the plan have included making methods easier for property owners and contractors to communicate with us, mostly via email now. Set up a special email address in which they can communicate with us. The infestation is spreading. It has been detected as far south as 12th Street between the interstates and just northwest of 26th and Marion Road. And while this is not unexpected, we will continue to monitor the spread, and our response plan will be flexible going forward. Treatments do continue by property owners. The goal of our plan was to remove 2,200 street trees per year throughout the life of the response plan, and right now we're averaging just over that, and have targeted more than 2,200 trees for removal in 2021. And currently there are less than 1,000 inventoried ash trees that remain in the park system. This, of course, does not include the riparian areas along the river and wooded areas and parks such as Tut Hill, Sherman, and Great Bear. This is just another slide that shows the projected street tree ash counts over time through the response plan. And of course, with the fewer number of trees comes less risk. To give you a visual on where we've been so far with the response plan for street tree removals, the blue area was our removal area in 2019. In 2020 was in yellow, and our current removal area is in red. And at this point, we've got 5 of those different lots in red already completed. Trees are already gone in those areas. City crews took out 4 of those lots last fall, actually, between the months of November and December, so we got a bit of a jump on 2021 removals. This slide shows some early 2021 progress with the 2 stumps that are up there on the left-hand side. And as I'd mentioned, we identified 2,210 trees, street trees for removal this year. And then the map on the right gets a closer look of the removal area for 2021 and also the trees that have been identified for removal. Now you'll notice that there's really nothing on the east and south of our removal areas on this map, and that's because those areas are essentially void of any street trees that are ash. I'd mentioned some of the technology enhancements that we've done over the last year or so. The picture on the left shows our treatment tracking. So this is an application that arborists will use when they're out in the field treating trees. And they input this information, and then we get to see this in real time. And what this really helps us with is that when we go to select trees for removal for the next year, we already know that these trees have been treated, and we just pass them by so that we're not sending communication to the property owners about removing trees that they've already treated. The picture there at the top is the tracking for the removals. The green dots are trees that have already been removed, and the red ones are trees that are still up. And the contractor in the field changes the tree status. We see it in real time. They remove the tree, take a picture of the stump, and move on. With these enhancements, communications with contractors, property owners, and between contractors has greatly improved. By removing trees within the park system, we've made a lot of room to be able to begin replanting efforts. We planted 522 trees in the park system last year. We're planning for 500 trees again in 2021. And at this pace, we will have replaced, if we continue on this pace every year, we will have replaced every inventoried ash tree in the park system by 2025. And while greatly diversifying our urban forest. And if anybody wants to help plant some of these trees, we are kicking off the volunteer planting day, going to give it a go this year for Friday, April 30th and Saturday, May 1st. Going to plant 355 trees across 12 different parks. And if anybody wants to help, they can sign up through the Helpline Center at 211. At this point, we've got a great response. We've got 184 volunteers already signed up for this event. I'd mentioned that we needed to start replanting early, and making room on the streets was one of the biggest enhancements that we made through this, through the change in 2020. In 2019, we would remove 1 ash tree essentially per property, not to take all of their ash trees all at once. We quickly learned that it would be better for us to take all of the ash trees on a property, giving them an opportunity to replant. The picture here on the left is a perfect example. You can see the 2 ash tree stumps. And then the white circle in the middle is the area that has been approved for replanting. Last year, through our planting permits, we issued 133 permits to plant 217 trees. And then the list there on the right shows the trees that were planted, and definitely shows that we are diversifying the urban forest. You'll notice no maples on that list as they're not approved street trees. But the elm hybrids are leading the charge as far as the most selected tree on our approved street tree list, excuse me. We are working with neighborhood associations to identify locations to plant. It has been difficult in some neighborhoods where we have not been to remove trees yet, so we just haven't created that space, and the planting sites just don't exist. We are making space, which will accelerate the pace of planting, and we continue to look for opportunities to encourage replanting, and this includes researching grants and potential for cost share programs. Our removal contractors have been impressed with our paperless process to track and invoice their work, and property owners have been impressed with our removal contractor as well. Just a couple of quotes, the top one from the contractor and the bottom one from a property owner who witnessed the street tree removal efforts in their neighborhood. So our keys to continued success: we have got a very solid plan for managing the infestation to smooth out the impact, and we will definitely adjust our strategy as we learn more each year and as the infestation spreads. Some of that may be that you've seen big blocks of areas that contiguous areas in which we've been removing trees. That might change in future years if we get an infestation hotspot in a certain area in which we need to go in and take out some infested trees as we move forward. But we did start early. We have started replanting. We are sticking to the plan. We are avoiding the 5-year, nobody told us this would happen. We have taken every opportunity to communicate far and wide and presentations in various places so that we can continue to get the word out and people can continue to think about this and know that in the next few years they will definitely start to see some of the impact around our community. Again, we're continuing to communicate throughout the process, and we are definitely diversifying the tree population with our updated street tree list and with the number of trees and the variety of trees that we are planting within the park system. Thank you for the opportunity to visit with you today about this response plan, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Kelby. Questions, comments from the council? Councilor Starr.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Marish, you were talking to us about emerald ash borer long before it was cool. So now that you've had the opportunity to move over into the cool category, I appreciate that. So one of the places I wanted to head this afternoon is what's available for the average homeowner tree stock wise? What are our wholesalers have available? What are our retailers able to bring for the average citizen as we're replacing street trees and just trees in general?
So from my experience, there's plenty of trees if people want to plant. We are providing with all of the retailers and wholesalers our approved street tree list so they can share that with their customers too, so that they're definitely planting an approved street tree and also utilizing our permitting process. And we've been greatly expanding the list of trees that we are trying to purchase as we're planting the 500 to the park system, and in doing so that helps some of those nurseries bring in some of those additional trees as well that others might not think about planting.
Makes sense. The other direction that I wanted to head, tell me a little bit of how you're going to use your Ascend interns this summer. I know there's one for forestry. I think there's some turf, and so it probably goes across the department. When I looked at the list, it was primarily parks, and thank you, because I appreciate the effort to add interns to what you're doing. But specifically, what's a forestry intern as part of the Ascend program going to do for us this summer?
So that's a thing that Brian Peterson is heading up for us, and he's reached out to regional universities to find those students looking for this type of opportunity. And they'll work side by side with him a lot of times, checking on some of the, doing some updates to, whether it be updates to the inventory, looking for trees to add to the removal list in 2022, to follow up on with stump removal contractors, and also help with other forest management things, planting permits and selecting planting locations and species within our park system as well. So really trying to give them, the biggest thing about these internships that we wanted is we wanted it to be valuable for the students. We know that they're going to be valuable for us, but we wanted them to have a valuable experience when they came and worked with us for the summer.
Do they do any type of presentation then at the end, or is there, can you bring them to us? We'd embarrass them. I know engineering and planning does that, but to just give us an idea of the experiences they had during the summer, I guess is my suggestion, more at some point for an informational, but so we see the value too.
Right? Yeah, that would be a great idea. Of course, this is going to be our first time in the waters with internships, so we're looking forward to it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Others, Councilor Sale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will have to say that, you know, when I first came on the council, that this seemed like, oh, geez, we got a crisis in Tree City. We have a tree crisis. Well, now here we are almost 3 years later, and the crisis has just turned into an issue. We've had actual crises since then. So my comment would just be thank you for turning what started as a crisis into just something, a policy issue that we've dealt with, and we've done it in a way that I know it's taken a lot of time to educate us dumb counselors, but thank you for doing it, and you have our support, and I think it's looking really good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Selberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the presentation. This planting day, have we had those in years past? Is this the first time, or?
This will be the first time. We had planned one for last year, but obviously with the events that took place through April of last year, we canceled the event before it ever happened. So those trees were all planted with city crews, but we're going at it again this year, and the response, like I said, has been really good. But this will be the first time we'll get this event completed.
How many are you hoping to have volunteer? Do you have goals for that? And then I'd imagine the assignment set up where you'll send everybody and.
Yeah, we've got it set up by park, a certain number of trees in each park, and asking people just to sign up for how many they want. And as far as the number of people, it doesn't really matter. We're just trying to get to 355 trees planted. So if a family of 5 wants to come out and only plant 1 tree, that's great. If they want to plant 20 trees, that's great too.
Right, yeah, I think you'd get a great response for that. All right, thank you.
Any questions, comments from the phone?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Kiley.
Thank you. Kelby, is the Community Foundation still taking donations to the relief program to provide funding for replacing trees throughout our city parks?
Yeah, there is a fund still set up at the Community Foundation for that.
Okay, thank you. Well, I would just encourage anybody that's watching or listening to consider donating to that very worthy cause. Thank you, and good job to date.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions from the phone?
Councilmember Neitzer.
Councilor Brecky.
Just a brief comment. I just want to chime in along with everyone else. Thank you for the presentation and the good planning and the good execution of the work you are doing. I think it could have, as Councilmember Sale said, it was first presented as a crisis. It could have been a crisis, but this was one that we were able to get out in front of, and now it's just managing an issue and a problem. And while it's sure sad to see them come down, it's nice to know they're down and we're already in the planting process. I was really excited to hear about the planting that you've already done and the planting program that you started and this opportunity to volunteer to help plant. I think it's so important. One question I do have was I know I looked at your list and I know that maples aren't on it, and my understanding is that's because we already have too many maples in the city as a whole. I would say this, if there's one area where I could see some room for improvement, it's just getting that word out, because, I noticed that you said they're not allowed as street trees, but I think some people are still sticking them in as street trees, and I did see a lot in my neighborhood that replaced after the tornado, and we got hit hard in my neighborhood, replaced in their yards, with maple trees. As I understand it, they are in danger of getting a bug and then having, just a serious loss of those in a wholesale fashion, just like we've, experienced with elm and with ash. And so if there's anything you can do to get that word out, to just, really be public about your list, but not only for replacement of the street trees, which are the ones we care about, but just putting people and educating people to know that they really shouldn't be putting them in their yards either. They're just such a beautiful tree, and I just think it's so natural. You look down the street and you see them, you think, oh, I'm just going to put in a maple. And I still don't think that word is really strongly out there as well as it needs to be. And that was the only just constructive suggestion I would make. But thank you again for all the work you're doing, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we've been around to everybody, so I have a few things. One small thing that I heard from more than one homeowner was, I guess operationally, was the timing between the tree being cut down and then the stump removal. Sometimes that space was longer than maybe they would have preferred. Has there been any changes in the way that happens? And is a stump removal done by the same firm? How does that work?
Yes, actually, that's an area we've made great strides in. We have stump grinding contractors this year, and once we give them work, they've got a certain number of days to get those stumps ground out. So that'll happen a whole lot faster than it did in the past. And at the beginning of 2021, with the exception of some stumps that had some landscaping around them, we were completely caught up with the stumps in the streets. So it was something we fell behind really quickly on. It was kind of the first fly in the ointment of our response plan, and we addressed it and are caught up to this point. Of course, it's one of those things that as we get deeper into the response plan, we just keep creating more stumps, which just is a nature of the beast.
So after the tree is cut down, a work order goes over to the stump grinding company, and they will have so much time to come out and get it removed. Is that?
Yep, and the stump grinding contractor's got access to that same application where they can see, as the removals happen, they can see it in real time too. The stump grinding actually happens a little bit faster than tree removals, so they did want a bit of an inventory of stumps before they started their work, so that they weren't, constantly in the way of the removal contractors. They were getting their stumps out. So it'll happen a whole lot faster than it has in years past. Of course, weather that we're got today, the stump contractors aren't out, but they will be once the weather improves.
Okay, are there a significant number that are very close to the bike trail alignment? And if so, is that like call for closures temporarily to remove them?
Yeah, we try to, so within the park system, we're removing trees essentially from November 1st to the 1st of March. And so most of that work is already done. We try to do that. It works best for us in the winter months. We've got the capacity, and we can use the entire operations team to do that, divide them up into different crews so that we can get that work done. But yeah, we've done a lot of work along the bike trail. Essentially what we're doing is we're identifying ash trees that if they were to fall, if they have a target. So if they're going to reach the bike trail, or if they're going to reach something that would damage, that we're targeting those trees for removal. Some of the other ones, if they don't have a target, if they fall over, then we can deal with forest debris at that point.
Is the removals, is that all being done by Lefkey, or is it a part city, part Lefkey?
So the street tree removals, all of the contracted removals are being done by Lefkey. City crews, park crews did remove about 400 trees in November and December that were on the 2021 street tree removal list. And all of the tree removals in the park system are being done by park crews.
Okay, very good. Interesting presentation, great progress. Thanks for bringing it to us. Okay, that moves us on to our second presentation, Falls Park Public-Private Partnership Project. And it looks like our Director of Parks and Recreation, Don Kearney, is going to lead us off.
Good afternoon, councilors. Don Kearney with Parks and Recreation. We're really excited today to be before you. Really think it's a special day for our park system, but also it's just a special day for Sioux Falls about the project we're going to announce to you today. I say that because we're proposing to share with you a public-private partnership that we've been working on with Gary and Diane Jacobson, along with the Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation, that would really provide for the construction of our first ever ice skating ribbon and first ever all-inclusive playground in Falls Park West. To give you an idea of what we're talking about, these are examples of ice ribbons in other communities. The one on the left is Maggie Daley Park in Chicago. The one on the right is the Riverfront Park in Spokane, Washington. Here's an all-inclusive playground and ice ribbon in Howard Park in South Bend, Indiana. Again, another aerial view of the Maggie Daley Park ice ribbon in Chicago, just showing the type of interest that you'll see in these particular facilities and what the draw that they would be here, not only in Sioux Falls, but across the country. And much like the Levitt Shell, these improvements will raise the bar for Falls Park or downtown Sioux Falls and the entire area with the regional draw that these facilities will create. And we believe it'll serve well beyond the borders of Sioux Falls and bring people from the entire region. Here happens to be an all-inclusive playground in Woodbury, Minnesota. It's an example of what an all-inclusive playground could look like, and we're really excited about the potential for that to happen in Falls Park West as well. Again, here's another example of what some of those other all-inclusive playgrounds might look like. We think this is another great example of a public-private partnership, and yet it's also another example of the generosity of a Sioux Falls family that has really helped to serve as a catalyst to be able to move this project forward. We're pleased to also say that this project aligns with our Downtown 2025 plan. If you're familiar with that plan, one of the goals of that plan was to create a year-round downtown, and one of those things that were identified was a downtown ice rink. As you remember, about a year ago at this time, we also put before you a Parks and Recreation comprehensive plan, and one of those recommendations of those plans was to provide new experiences in our city parks. And obviously we have ice rinks, but we don't have refrigerated ice ribbons. And we have playgrounds, but we don't have all-inclusive playgrounds. And so we're really excited about what these two facilities would do for our park system in general. And then, as you know, we're trying to raise $10 million in private investment by 2022. And this obviously helps us to achieve that goal, subject to your approval. And I'm pleased to say that we're on track to accomplish that BHAG. A little bit about the actual agreement between the Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation and the city. And we want to provide a little bit of an overview of that, but then also know that ultimately when these agreements go to the park board, come back to the city council, you get the full detail, but we did want to hit the highlights of what's being proposed. So we would receive $2 million from the Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation. Those funds obviously would be provided by the Jacobson family for a 50-50 cost share on a proposed $4 million project. We also would identify $2 million that would be considered by the council as part of the Sioux Falls for All initiative, very much like the Hayward Park project that we briefed you on a couple weeks ago, where we identified funding to match the Jacobson family's funding in order to be able to move forward with the project. One of the other things I wanted to share was that this partnership proposed provides a naming opportunity for the Jacobsons, whereby the area in Falls Park would be named Jacobson Plaza at Falls Park in perpetuity. What's also really unique about this situation is that a lot of times we'll have donors that come forward and say, hey, I'd like to give you some money to do a park project. Rarely do we see the opportunity for replacement funding also to be included in that proposed gift. So just hats off to the Jacobson family for realizing that there is a useful life on this equipment, that it doesn't last forever, and that they are planning to put a fund in place at the Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation that as some of these systems become obsolete or get to the end of the useful life, there'll be a fund in place to be able to replace those in the future. And so I think it's very forward-looking and very generous on their behalf to be able to do that for us. One of the other things I wanted to do is, one of the things we talk about when we talk about all-inclusive playgrounds, people look at us like, well, what is that? What does that all include? And then, knowing that ice ribbons aren't real common around here, if you've been to one of the larger cities that maybe I showed on the screen, you might have experienced one of them. And so Mike Patton, you've heard from Mike before, he's our park development specialist. He's done a lot of research on the design of these, and I thought it'd be time well spent for us to be able to talk you through what an ice ribbon consists of, what an all-inclusive playground consists of. But then I'd also like to, after Mike is done, be able to have you hear from Jim Weidrich. Jim is the attorney representing the Jacobsons and working with the Community Foundation, but also Robin Hobben as well. As many of you probably know, Robin is the daughter of Gary and Diane Jacobson, and is here to provide some comments on behalf of the donor as well. So. With that, I'll turn it over to Mike to talk you through what these consist of.
Great. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Mike Patton, Parks and Recreation. As Don mentioned, the proposed improvements would happen in that area between where the Levitt is now and where the railroad is that separates Falls Park West from Falls Park proper. The site itself has been kind of just an open grass field for many years. It was originally leveled off during the Phillips to the Falls project back in like 2004, and it sat, just grass since then. And so with downtown redeveloping and other surrounding developments with the connections to Falls Park and, the future phases of the downtown River Greenway, we feel it's a great opportunity and great location for creating that year-round hub of recreational activity. The map you see up there is kind of a configuration that could happen. Really, the two main key components of this project would be, like Don mentioned, the ice skating ribbon and the all-inclusive playground. To go along with that, it would need support facilities like a restroom and a warming house and the mechanical rooms that holds the equipment, and connections to, the existing parking and the surrounding context. So really, what is an ice skating ribbon? And the best way for me to describe it is, if you're on an ice skating rink, you're kind of skating on the pond, right? And if you're on an ice skating ribbon or trail, you're really skating on the river. And what the difference is, it's kind of a unique experience in that it, has gentle curves and you're not just going around in a circle, and it creates different views and experiences as you go around it. It also sort of puts the recreational skater where they typically are. Where if you think about a rink, the average recreational skater just kind of goes around the edges. Maybe there's a pickup hockey game or something going on in the middle, but the majority of people go around the outside. So really what this does is creates a longer, more exciting version of the outside around the rink. Now, we're also proposing that this rink be refrigerated, which would be, our first stab at that here in Sioux Falls, and we've studied ice and in the surrounding area, and really what it comes down to is Mother Nature really doesn't play ball with us like she used to. And keeping good quality ice on the days where people want to utilize that ice is difficult. By refrigerating, it really extends that season. Depending on how things go, we could really start in November and extend into March. So it really creates a better quality experience and also a longer, more programmable ice experience. And ultimately lead to that year-round recreation. The nice thing about the ice skating ribbon is it's a little more conducive to multi-season use, where an ice hockey rink is just this open space that maybe you can play a sport on it or whatever, but the ribbon in itself kind of lends itself to almost a walking trail or a connective pathway around other features. When we talk about what is an all-inclusive playground, the technical definition is a universally designed, sensory-rich environment that enables children to develop physically, socially, and emotionally. Really what does that mean is it all comes down to the design of the play structure and how it utilizes different thoughts and different components of your sensory play to really help children that are utilizing the play equipment start to discover their world and their surrounding context, how they integrate with others, and really use the different play components to help advance the physical skills, the cognitive, the sensory, the social skills of the kids playing on that structure, so that they can engage with others and sort of manipulate and change and impact their surrounding world. And so if I could sum it all up, what are we hoping to accomplish with an inclusive playground? It'd be, at the end of the day, we want to create an environment where children of all abilities feel comfortable, that they can go and interact with each other and do what they really want to do, which is play. Just a little idea into the next steps involved with this project. We'll be going to Park Board here in February for their recommendation. Ultimately looking to come back to this board in March as a part of a potential CIP amendment. And if moving forward, we'd look to jump right into design this year with the goal of constructing in 2022 and hopefully putting skates on the ice in the winter of 2022. With that, I'll turn it over to Jim and Robin to talk a little bit about their end of the partnership.
Welcome, Jim.
Good afternoon. Jim Wiederick with law firm of Woods, Fuller, Schultz, and Smith. We've been working with Gary and Diane Jacobson and the folks on the city parks and the city attorney's office to negotiate the agreement. And we've been working on that pretty heavily for a couple of weeks now. And the agreement has been finally agreed upon as of this afternoon. And there are a lot of elements to it. I would say that the negotiations have gone really well. Everybody is pulling in the same direction. So we're excited to see this project go forward. I'd like to comment on a couple of items that were mentioned previously. One of the unique features of this gifting agreement is that Gary and Diane have entered into or created two agreements with the Community Foundation. And one of those agreements is to do the initial funding that we talked about today for the $2 million for design and construction. The second fund is of a significant amount of money that will be placed with the Community Foundation under a separate agreement, and it's available in perpetuity for two purposes. One would be to replace anything that becomes obsolete or it can no longer be repaired or maintained, but the other would also be to expand what is currently going to be designed and constructed, so that down the road, if there are new ideas that come to this part of the park, and the park board can come to the foundation and say, we've got these ideas. So what has really helped us in this regard is that the Community Foundation has really created a third kind of fund for this purpose, because the main two kinds of funds that they keep are one is to spend the funds immediately, The other is to endow funds, and then there is a percentage limit on the amount that can be distributed on an annual basis, which is pretty typical of trusts and foundations of this sort. So this third foundation, or this third fund, will allow for the use of not only the income off of the fund, but the principal until it's expired. And if it never gets expired and keeps going by way of replacement and additions to this part of the park, so be it. Which I think is really exciting to look long-term down the road, 30, 40, 60, 70 years down the road. So with that in mind, I would also say that that we are excited to know from the parks folks that there is an intention to, at some point, expand the facilities that the Levitt Center has to the south of this, and to the extent that they would want to use part of this area that is undeveloped at the initial part, that they may do that. They may come and bring those ideas to the foundation and to the Jacobson family, and those would be considered as potential for use of these funds, the replacement fund that we were talking about also. So with that, I don't know if you have any specific questions for me today, but when we're done, I'll invite Robin to come and talk on behalf of the family.
Sure. Shall we hear from the judge first and then go to questions? I think we'll do that. Welcome, Judge Howman. It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you all for allowing me to be here. I am not here in my judge capacity. I am here today in my capacity as the daughter of Gary and Diane Jacobson, and I wanted to just give you a little bit of history and flavor for the kind of people my parents are and the kind of family they attempted to raise. My father was born and raised in Sioux Falls, and his parents divorced when he was quite young. As a result, his mother raised him and his sister on her own, and she did so by working double shifts at Sioux Valley Hospital as a charge nurse. As a result, the neighbors in the community provided care, comfort, and a lot of meals to my father and to his sister. So that allowed him to grow up with a lot of gratitude in his heart for the way the community surrounded him and his sister, and also for how hard his mother worked to support them. And he grew up eager to pay things forward. My parents were married in 1966, and my mother made Sioux Falls her home starting at that time. On a wing and a prayer in 1971, they purchased a business in Sioux Falls, and again, they felt the incredible support of this community for them. And as soon as they were able, they began to give back. First, they gave back by serving on boards of banks and hospitals and of nonprofits. And once they were able to, then they began paying it forward with financial help. One of their first projects in Sioux Falls was to establish a fund for nursing students. And the requirement of the funds for the nursing students was that it had to be a single mother raising children, and they had no GPA requirements. They wanted to ensure that mothers who wanted to create a better life for themselves and their children through the career of nursing had the ability to do that. They understood also that it took a lot to be a student and to raise children, and so they had no GPA requirements. Every couple of years, we get an update on all of the nurses who have been supported through their efforts. Over the last decade or so, they wanted to instill in their children this great sense of community and of giving. And so I think myself, my sister, and our children would all say that the best part of their year is the opportunity we have on Christmas to identify donors for the Jacobson Foundation. And we do presentations, and there are many local projects and entities who have been recipients of that generosity over the last number of years. I would tell you, though, that the Jacobson Plaza at Falls Park is the thing that brings tears to their eyes anytime they mention it. I think they feel it's their capstone, and they really want to provide an opportunity for our community to come together in ways that are fun, not just for you and I, but for those who are less fortunate and have difficulties doing things. So it's very important not only to have the ice ribbon, but to have the portion of the park that is all-inclusive for young children who may have disabilities. So that's what brings me here today. Thank you very much for allowing us to be here and for hearing about this project.
Thank you. Thanks for telling us about your parents. Awesome. I think we'll, unless we have any closing remarks, we'll open it up to questions, either for staff or for Jim or for Judge Howman. Anybody? Councilor Sale.
Thank you, Councilor Neitzer. I just have a couple of comments and just maybe one point. I tell you, I'm tremendously excited for this. When I first heard about it, the generosity that this community brings sometimes just shocks me. It sets me back for what all the problems we might have, and then somebody comes forward with an idea and a concept like this. It's really humbling to sit up here and hear these kind of things come forward. So I greatly appreciate that, and thank you to you and your family and all of those that have worked on this project. It did take me by surprise when I first heard about it, because somebody had in a different venue had approached me about an ice ribbon, and that kind of excites me because I'm raising a family. I'm not raising, my children are raising families that are all skaters, and they love to skate, and this is a great opportunity. And I know the problems that we have in this climate, not this past week, but normally in this climate with keeping ice. So the refrigeration project is great. My only point would be to Don Kearney and the Parks Department that there's a vacant spot that I think a curling rink would fit really good on here. And as long as you've got the refrigeration unit, I would encourage you to be inventive to maybe look at putting a curling facility there too. But overall, thank you very much for what you've done, and this is a great project.
Other comments, questions? Any on the phone at this point?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
We'll go to Councilor Kiley and then to Selberg.
Well, thank you very much. And a special thanks to the Jacobsons and Judge Howman for their generosity. I mean, this is something that is in great need within our community. Currently, right now, about the only thing that we have for individuals, that need that have adaptive requirements is our Field of Dreams, and that's basically if they're interested in playing softball or baseball. The rest of our park system is fairly void of amenities that lend themselves to individuals with special needs. So I thank you very much. My oldest sister was born with special needs, and during her short life of 18 years, she was very restricted to what activities she could participate in. So the adaptive park and the ice ribbon, I think, can go hand in hand. So just a few suggestions that I've already mentioned to Director Kearney is to keep individuals with special needs in mind for the ice ribbon as well. There's a number of things that they can incorporate. First of all, make sure that there's wide entrances to the ribbon that are fairly flat without steep slopes so that people that have special needs and mobility issues can easily access it. And if we could have on hand maybe sets of ice walkers or skate walkers, which are similar to a regular walker, but can be used by individuals that have mobility needs, and then they can skate on their own. There's other special belts that can be worn by the individual, which has handles around it, so other skaters can skate along, but yet the skater can feel like he or she is acting under their own power, but their colleagues can help support them in those times of need regarding maintaining balance and preventing falls. So there's a lot of different options that can be incorporated. So I just hope that we keep that. Oh, and there are ice sleds too that can be incorporated out on the ice ribbon too. So Thank you very much. I think this is a great addition to our Sioux Falls park system.
Thank you, Councillor Kiley. Councillor Selberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, it's things like this that make you proud to be a citizen of Sioux Falls. Thank you for sharing that story. Heartwarming, wonderful, very inspiring. Yeah, how can you not be wholeheartedly behind something like this? I think it's going to be very exciting to see it come together. I would have one question, and maybe I'm missing it through the presentation or not, but as it's put together and comes together, are there a lot of operational expenses that will be involved once it's up and running? I mean, I see something where it's obviously it's going to be beautiful. Is it going to need some security? Is it going to need some people overseeing it, or what all is involved in that part?
Yeah, that's a great question. And obviously with the refrigerated ice comes additional resources that'll be required to operate it on a regular basis. The other thing I would mention is that the all-inclusive playground is very low maintenance, other than blowing it off with leaves or debris or whatever it might be. Largely that'll be a very low maintenance type facility. We do anticipate that we'll be able to program this facility, seasonal events, whether it be Thanksgiving, New Year's, the Christmas holidays. I'll be able to have events there, having, glow skates. I mean, there'll be all kinds of different things that we'll be able to do in addition just to regular open skate. Who knows, we might find a way to do some curling too, Counselor Sale. But yeah, we definitely will have to staff it. And the operational plan really hasn't been built out yet, but obviously one of the things we also want to do is learn from these other cities that already have them. What works, what doesn't work, how does the programming work? Do they charge, do they not charge? How do they do skate rentals? All the things Councilor Kiley talked about is, helping folks with disabilities, just making it a great experience for everybody who wants to try it. So, but yeah, we haven't just fully vetted that out yet, but there certainly will be costs associated with that. And we're planning to work with Sean and his team and budgeting for how we'll take care of that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You bet.
Thanks to you and your family. Thank you.
Other questions on the phone?
Chairman Neitzer?
Councillor Brecky.
I would just like to add my comments. When we were presented with the Parks Master Plan, one of the things that I asked a few questions about and could kind of see that was in the mind's eye of the Parks Department was what I called embracing winter. And I remember relating to them at that time, my challenge to them that we do that in Sioux Falls. And I think of family members that I have in Minnesota and how differently they approach winter from how South Dakotans do. And I often joke to my brother, they just, they flood their backyards and turn them into ice skating rinks, and they get out, they go crazy over hockey. And they've been doing those things for years. And we've been holing up like little moles, and then we come out in the spring and go, woo, we survived another one. And so it's just it's about an attitude. And when they first presented us, with this concept as being a concept, I thought, oh, what a wonderful way to help us embrace winter by when the Stampede came here. That was one of the first things I think that really started us, taking a different look at how we might view winter in South Dakota. And I think it has increased the hockey. And now with the hockey, with the complex out there. And so just ice skating for regular people is such an inclusive thing, and it's affordable thing. And this concept, I think, is so innovative and so exciting that I think it's just going to, help us further go down that path to embrace winter, enjoy winter, and make it something that we actually look forward to instead of just getting through it. So thank you to the Jacobson family. This is incredibly exciting. And, I look forward to every aspect of it and am wholly supportive. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, first of all, amazing generosity. Thank you. Thank you to your parents. I do have a few questions. I think maybe a few might be for park staff and maybe a few might be for Jim, possibly. Would there be some sort of, with a gift like this, I think it's well deserved, would there be some sort of plaque or something on the property recognizing the donors or having a story or something like that?
Yeah, as part of the agreement you'll see come forward is that there will be an opportunity for them to be prominently recognized for their gift, and that'll be something that very much like we did with the Kirby Dog Park, you know, just having some prominent signage there to recognize them. And then from time to time, as that changes, there's allowances for that as well.
Okay,
You know, if there's happened to be a name change or whatever it might be, we certainly can accommodate that.
great. That would be well-deserved and appropriate. So the entire projected cost would be covered by a city match plus the Jacobson donation? That's the extent of the funding?
Yeah, the all-in number that we're projecting is the $4 million number, half from each party.
Okay. So you talked about the operating cost a little bit. What about the existing, kind of related to that, what about the existing ice rinks that we have, including the one over by, you know, at Memorial Park near where I live, which is admittedly incredibly difficult to have operational days because of the weather. Is that something we're going to have to consider, whether we keep them all open? Would we change them? Would we divert some of the part-time staff to the new place? What do you think the future is of those non-refrigerated rinks?
Well, one of the things we found is as we've researched other cities, larger cities like Des Moines, others south of I-90, they're finding that they've essentially gone away from national rinks just because they struggle to have any sense of consistency and be able to flood them and keep them going. Unfortunately, this year, about the time we normally close them down, it got cold, finally. And so certainly our desire is to see what energy and enthusiasm that this project can create for refrigerated rinks, because not only can the general public just not skate, we can't program them because we never know week to week whether or not we're going to have skatable ice or we're going to have a slush pond, so to speak. So certainly our desire is to try to move towards refrigerated rinks. Now exactly how many and where, that's yet to be determined, but certainly the ones that we have are not real productive. Todd Hill is probably the exception because of the shade that we have there. It's probably our most consistent rink, but the other ones really struggle to have good quality ice. And obviously we're looking to try to provide a better product, and we think refrigerated ice is certainly a solution.
Okay, is there any provision or what direction would you be looking to go in terms of either it being free to the public, having some sort of fees? Obviously, usually you'll have like a skate rental fee, but I'm just talking access to the ice. And would there be private rentals, or what would the pricing structure look like? What's envisioned?
Yeah, what I would think is that we would start with our current fee structure that we have with our existing rinks, where you have skate rentals. You know, we also have some free days during Frosty Frolics where there is no charge to be able to skate or use the skate rentals. But again, as I mentioned, we really haven't built that out yet. We kind of want to see what works in other cities, realizing we've never had one of these before. And again, we think it's going to be widely popular. So we just want to learn from what those other cities what their operational budgets are, what do they charge, if they charge, do they have a scholarship program? You know, I think we're going to want to try to fully build that out, and realizing that as Jim said, you know, in the last weeks, we really slammed hard on this agreement to get it in place, to be able to get it in front of you. So more to come on that.
Okay, I'm just looking for here's a picture of it. I don't know if I can tell. Would there be some sort of small warming house sort of a thing where you can rent skates and maybe have a few amenities?
Yeah. If we go back to the concept plan, you'll be able to see that we have a warming house as part of that concept plan, which should double as a restroom, very much like you'd see at Memorial. I can see something very similar being installed here as well, so that people have a chance to warm up, get some hot chocolate, be able to socialize with their friends, those types of things. So.
Okay, very good. I don't need it right now, but would it be possible to try to get for us a projected annual operating cost? Is that going to be?
You bet.
And then if there's any offsets that you're envisioning based on, I don't know if there's going to be less at other facilities or if they're going to keep the status quo, the other ice rinks.
Yeah.
I guess it'd be good to know. I have no idea how much it costs to refrigerate for several months of a year, if it's,
Yep, we can certainly pull that together.
okay, yeah, it'd be good to know what the ongoing cost is. Is this something that is meant to be pretty much exclusively for just leisure skating versus, I mean, I guess I'm not entirely familiar with how they work, but I mean, for example, are there people on there with hockey sticks and doing that sort of thing, or is it basically restricted to you should just be skating?
I believe it'll be primarily just recreational, and just being able to have what I'll call kind of a festive rink opportunity, holiday lights, those types of things. I certainly think it'll be a tourism draw for our downtown. People shopping in downtown could drop the kids off, they could go shopping, come back, pick the kids back up. So yeah, I think it'd be primarily just for recreational skating.
Okay, and then maybe my final question, probably for Jim, would be, I think he touched on it, which was, I had the word endowment in my head when I was thinking of the second fund, and it sounds like the difference is this one, there isn't a rule that you can't touch the principal. Is that the only distinction, essentially?
Correct. So that it would be, it's hope that, it'll be a number of years before you really have to start replacing equipment, buildings, whatever it might be. And what they'll put together as part of this fund then will continue to earn interest and dividends and grow, but it will not be limited only to the income that comes off of it. If it appears that there's a great idea, some or all of the principal could eventually be used for replacement down the road. And that could be 30 years from now or 50 years from now. And it will continue to grow until it's used.
Who ultimately makes the decision then in terms of what an appropriate expenditure from that fund would be?
Well, it would have to be an agreement ultimately between the foundation and the city. And the foundation, under its agreement with the Jacobson family, will receive input into that decision-making process.
So there'd be a written agreement with the foundation would have that would dictate the appropriate uses of those funds, and they are entrusted to expend those appropriately.
Yep. Yes.
And then is that a fund that is going to be expected to be raising other private dollars over the years, or is this essentially one infusion and then it's just going to be expected just whatever the investments would make?
It will raise funds over the years. The Jacobson family intends to make contributions to it on an annual basis. And then there's also going to be a request to family and friends that may want to contribute to that replacement fund also. But there's not going to be a public request. At least there's no expectation at this point.
Okay.
It would all be private.
If somebody knew what the fund was, can they reach out and just write a check? If they'd like to? There won't be a solicitation, it sounds like, but if somebody just wanted, if they cared about this, would they be able to donate to that fund?
I'll let Andy answer that.
Yeah. Looks like it might be Andy Patterson.
Yeah, Andy Patterson with the Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation. Yeah, it would be, anybody could add to it, but I think the expectation is that family and close friends would be the expected donors, and probably more strongly initially, and then maybe on an annual basis, but that anybody could if they so desire. But the fund would be limited to Jacobson Plaza, so I don't think we'd expect broad public interest in adding to it.
Okay, so that's the distinction between that and like a Hayward fund that's actively advertised on the website and there's public ask going on. So
Yeah, the Hayward Fund, that's starting with the expectation that that's more of a community fundraising effort, and there's a couple groups that are out asking other individuals. This is really a family and close friends that are taking care of it themselves.
Great, all right, thank you very much. Exciting project, thanks for bringing it to us. That's it for presentations today. So we're going to move on to public comment. Anyone who'd like to comment for up to 5 minutes on anything we spoke about today is welcome to come forward. Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.